Welcome. My name is Hal Gregersen, and I am the Executive Director of the MIT Leadership Center. Today, we're going to be visiting with Lior Div, the co-founder and CEO of Cyberreason. Lior, glad to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
One of the critical pieces of work that I'm in the middle of right now is what I call the CEO's dilemma. And that is that there are things that we don't know. And disruption and the most dangerous competitive moves that people make towards our organizations, they almost always emerge from that blind spot of what we don't know. And what I've found is that the higher leaders go, especially CEOs, the harder it is to uncover that blind spot. Your work at Cyberreason, I think, is all about figuring out blind spots. If you were talking to another set of CEOs, what would your story be to them about how do you uncover the things you don't know?
That's a phenomenal question. Because if you think about it, every day we are dealing with a situation that it's new to us. Because as a founder, usually you're coming from one field. It will be from the tech field, or you've been a manager in another company, but you weren't all of them. And the problem is that in order to be a great leader, and not just a great manager, and in order to be a great entrepreneur, and to create, and to basically disrupt a market, you always need to learn and change, learn and adapt. The thing is how you're doing it. So I have a short story about it.
Please.
When I established the company, it was one of our angel investors that told me that there is a curse on entrepreneur. I asked him, what is the curse of the entrepreneur? He said, every time that you manage to be an expert in something, it's irrelevant anymore. And you need to move to the next thing. And then you need to move to the next thing. Basically what I did is like I'm analyzing every problem, I try to find the place that will be the most similar to this, and to try to understand how can I solve it. And then I realized that sport, it's a great example. People, when they are practicing sport, they don't afraid to fail. And usually in business, you are afraid to fail. And for me, I said, okay, so if I'll take what I learned, I practiced karate for many years. If I'll take what I learned there, then maybe I can apply it to the business arena. So basically what I learned is that when you're practicing sport, you're failing all the time. And that became part of my business plan. I said, if I'm not taking risk and I'm failing all the time, I will never know what I don't know. So I need to go to places that I'm not feeling comfortable. I need to try to push and find out where is the boundaries, so I'll know that, oh, there is a blind spot here. So it's like endless search and failing. So this is kind of my way of thinking.
What drives you or motivates you to do what you just said? Because most organizations don't value that kind of activity and approach. That's my observation, at least.
Again, I'm calling it the moving targets.
Okay.
Usually somebody wake up in the morning and put a target to himself, personally or business-wise, and saying, that's my target, I want to achieve it. Most of the people, once they achieve their target, they are happy. I'm work the opposite. When I'm achieving my target, I'm not happy. I'm starting to think about the next target that I want to achieve. So that's the reason I'm calling it moving targets.
Okay.
And it was, for me, was from early age that I realized that I need to be happy because I will never be satisfied. Because every time that I'm doing something, I want to see, again, the boundary instinct, where I can push it more. Can I push it a little bit and achieve something that it's bigger than I managed to achieve till today? So this is my inner motor.
So did you get in trouble when you were in your early age?
That's a good...
Now, you mentioned
Yes.
in an early age you learned this process of getting to an edge and going to the next edge, getting to an edge and going to the next edge.
So it's a great question. I'll tell you what I learned. I learned that it's okay to fail, but I need to do it fast and course correct very fast. Because if most of the people when they are failing, it takes them a lot of time to admit that they failed, and then a lot of time to course correct it. And then I said, okay, that's not being an excellent. I want to be an excellent, but I cannot be excellent just by not failing. So I need to kind of fail fast, admit to myself and own it and say, okay, I failed, and then course correct very fast. And if the graph will be like this, then the end result will be excellency.
So now I'm just dying to have, it could be from the time you were born until today. It doesn't matter where in that trajectory. Can you give us an example of what you just described in your own world?
I have my canonical example about it. So at the age of, I think, 6, 7, the 3rd grade,
Really?
I discovered that I'm dyslexic. But what I discovered is that not just I can't read, is that everybody else thinks that I can read. So it was, and for a child, nobody told you what does it mean reading. For me, reading was to memorize everything. Yeah. So I asked somebody to read to me, I was memorizing it, and then I looking at the ceiling and reading. And for me, that was reading. And once in a while, you have pointers in the text that remind you what to say.
Yeah.
But that was reading for me. And then I realized that it's not gonna work like this, and I actually need to learn how to read. So that's, when I said you need to own it and to course correct very quickly. Yeah. So it took me almost a year to course correct it. But then I managed to course correct it, and after a year, I knew how to read.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So with that experience at a very young age, I suspect you started exploring that boundary and those edges in different ways than other people. In other words, the way in which you processed information and the kinds of information that you were paying attention to was probably different. Am I?
You're
right.
You're completely right. Because if you think about it, when you don't know how to read, but you need to deal with environment that's what you're doing all day long, then you understand that, yes, there is the regular path that everybody is taking, but the road is this wide. And in order to go there, you can go like this. There is different ways that you can still move forward, and sometimes even more fast, more aggressive, but it's not going to be the traditional way. Just the realization that another path exists, and the boundaries is bigger than you thought, especially as a kid, then it's something that I'm calling it's enabling, because it enables you to think different and not to be afraid of being different. So that's another thing that when it's come to kids is very, very important.
I usually ask this at the end, but I'm now very curious. Do you have kids?
Yes.
Do you do anything systematically or even semi-systematically to help them be good at what you're just describing? Because I assume they probably don't have dyslexia, and so they're operating in a different kind of world. And
so the answer is yes. It's about failure. It's about to encourage them to try, and not to give them the answers, to teach them to ask the questions. Because if you give all the time the answers, then people are starting to get used to, and especially kids, to just wait for the answer or to the right answer.
Right.
And the thing is that if you're understanding from an early age that there is not like one right answer, there is different answer that can, or different way that can lead you to achieve what you want, then it's, again, very enabling.
I can see that. So I didn't do the research, but there are 5 or 6 studies at least that look in the United States at educational systems where they basically track questions that students are asking in class. How many? What's the content? And it's systematic from, say, 6 years old to even early 20s in universities. The average student in a 1-hour period during an entire month-long class asks 1 question per month. The average teacher asks 50 to 100 questions per hour. They're essentially drilling their students to give quick, fast, right answers to get through exams and systems and all that sort of thing. Was that your experience? Because that kind of world of education, for example, doesn't foster asking the right questions.
So You know, I'm feeling that I'm very lucky that I had the dyslexia, that I needed to, you know, be different, because in the world that I was living, that was the exact situation that you described. Nobody was encouraged you to ask questions. There is a system, and you need to work according to the system, and if not, you're failing.
Yeah.
So I think that another thing that happened to me in an early age is I was practicing karate. So that's another thing that enabled me to understand that there is arena that you are living in, and it's not just, again, one path that you need to move inside the path. So that enables you and encourages you to think different.
This is really interesting. So you studied karate and you learned about arenas and movement within that, with a threat potentially in that arena. You've thought real carefully about asking the right questions, and there are multiple paths to get there. How does all that come back in a sort of concrete way to your world today? You're the CEO now of a company, Cyberreason, that's trying to essentially figure out as quickly as possible when folks attack other companies electronically, and get a good response to that. How does all that come together today in your world?
So there is the technical aspect of it that I am not going to focus today.
Good, because I'm not smart.
And I think that it's less interesting. But I would say that the first thing that we did when we established Cyberreason is to understand that the problem that we're dealing with is different than the regular problem that the security IT people are talking about. We basically said it's not an IT problem. It's not, you know, bits and bytes that this is the problem. There is adversary behind the scene that have an agenda, and it's people. So basically we need to find the people that creating the problem. Of course we're not going after them, but we need to track their intent. We need to track what they are doing. We need to understand that they are very, very, very creative, and they will try different ways. So again, if you take this and you compare it to karate and the adversary and this and that, it's a constant movement. All the time, the problem is keep shifting and shaping and moving, and basically this is the technology that we created behind the scene, that using a lot of machine learning and AI in order to enable this constant movement. Because if you are trying to solve the problem as to say, this is the problem and this is the solution, then you're going to fail, especially in the cybersecurity arena. If you understand that the problem is constantly moving and you need to move with the problem, then you can solve it. And that's the reason that our result today, it's phenomenal, because we're coming to every environment and we're not trying to say that we know in advance what we will see there. It's like we're coming, and again, it goes to the blind spot. We know that there is blind spot out there.
Right.
And we need to kind of sense and find out where are those blind spots and attack them in real time.
Electronically, I can see the system you're describing with AI and machine learning and so on making that kind of movement. I'm trying to think of how the analog of human reality, which is, you know, you're working with your team, for example, and you've got some wicked hard problem that you're trying to get a solution to as a team. It's the same thing. You know, the problem's moving, it's shifting, it's shaping. How does that operate within your team? In other words, how do you as a team, unassisted with AI and machine learning, to some degree, you know, behave that way?
First, our story. We moved from 3 people in 2012 to 120 people today, and till the end of the year we will be 200 people.
Wow.
So you need to add on top of that is how you are kind of applying this method to many, many people and keep the DNA of the company the same while you try to move. So I think that the first thing is, and that's what I realized, that I need to say it to people, that I'm coming back to failure. It's okay to fail. Actually, I'm testing how much failure exists in each and every one of the department, and if they are not failing, they're not good. That
I love it.
Simple thing, because if they are not failing, meaning they didn't try. If they didn't try, they will never be able to identify the blind spot. If they are not finding the blind spot, they will never be able to fight the next fight and the next one and the next one. Basically, they will say, okay, whatever we have today, it's good, and that's it. So I think that it's very important to emphasize it early in the process when you are recruiting people, but it's even more important to recruit the right people, that in their head, creativity and finding the boundaries, it's something that it's natural to them.
So if you were interviewing me to work at Cyberreason, how would you probe me for my love of failure?
There is a simple question, is like, did you play sport? If you play sport, is what kind of sport?
Okay.
What you like or what you didn't like? Do you like to win or do you like to lose? Or you don't like to lose, sorry. So I don't like the people that like to win, because when you love it, you're winning, and that's it, you win.
Yeah.
I want the people that they don't want to lose, no matter what. They will keep fighting every day, to move to the next thing. And that's tied to what I said about the moving targets.
You're trying to bring in people who behave in the way that your systems behave. in one sense.
Yeah, in a sense.
Because that's what the systems are doing. It's like, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, yes, no, nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back to your world as a CEO. Given that you're trying to, and you bring people in, you actually who are fond of failure. You're looking at reward systems for departments that actually value that. Is there some connection between a leader or a technical person in your organization asking really good questions? I call them catalytic in the sense they dissolve down an assumption, accelerated transformation, but is there something connection between asking those sorts of questions and the ability to fail fast and find solutions? Is there some connection there in your mind?
Yeah. I think that if you're happy and your definition of success is, to keep doing what I'm doing but good, that for me, this is a failure. But if you're a challenger, I'm calling them challengers. People that wake up in the morning and ask questions because they understand that the world is bigger than what they can see. It's like, I want to drive from here to California. I cannot see before the GPS. I cannot see the way, but I know that the way exists there. So if I'll ask the right question and I'll find my way, I know that I can get there. So the challenger, this is people that, every morning they want to ask questions and they want to figure out if there is another way or another thing that they can do. So I believe that there is, a very tight connection between the two.
Wow, I think you're absolutely right. That's what's going on in that process. You've moved from 3 to 120 and then 200 by the end of the year people.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be a CEO of 3 people, another thing to be a CEO of 120, it'll be another thing to be a CEO of 200. Does your capacity to ask those sorts of questions get challenged, get diminished, get threatened? Your own capacity as a CEO, as this organization grows, does it become increasingly difficult to ask the right questions?
Yeah.
And if so, why? And how do you get around that?
So I want to focus on how do you get around it.
Okay.
First, you need to realize and to know that the amount of control that you had when it was 20 people is not the amount of control that you have when it's 200 people.
Right.
It's not the same. But I had the basically luxury to build the organization from scratch. And this is not an organization that I was inherited from somebody else.
Right.
So I think that the most important piece is to recruit the right managers that sharing the same vision. So when I'm asking a very, very high level question here, this question is like propagate through the organization, and you don't need to explain it because people get that we're trying to do something that it's impossible basically. And when they get this, they're asking the right questions because probably I'm not the smartest guy in my company. I'm not the only one that can think, and if I was the only one, we were failing. So I need to, it's like a wave, did the push and then the wave needs to propagate through the organization. If you manage to do that on a daily basis, and this is about the questioning and put a question mark over everything that we're doing all the time, and to be courage to come back and to say, hey, we thought that we did this, it's not gonna work, we're now shifting very quickly to do this, and we will say if it works or not, but we don't know. That's another thing that it's okay. So this method, this is something that you need to implement early day.
It's a great metaphor of doing that. You know, one of the things that I've learned in interviewing now 200 folks like you is that there's like one set of executives, and here's how I would summarize their world, their everyday activity. They tend to stay in their office. They tend to be always right. They are pretty darn comfortable, and as a result, you know, they rarely get a new question or a new perspective. Versus, instead of being in my office, I'm often out of my office in spectacularly different situations. I'm actually looking for where I'm wrong, that notion that you were saying earlier. And when I'm looking for something wrong and I'm quiet and still enough to get some new information in, I'm going to be uncomfortable because it's probing this assumption that I've got that's wrong. Then these important new questions and insights emerge. Is that your world? In other words, do you systematically get yourself out of an office space into the world on the edge with strikingly different people and situations where you get provoked in order to see things differently?
So when I get provoked, I'm smiling. Why? Because then I know that it's moving. Then I know that, so I don't like an office. I have a space that I'm having my meetings, but I don't like to have an office. To be honest, for the past 10 years, I didn't have an office. Why? Because I didn't want to. Because it's very easy to stay inside your office, and I'm calling it inside your shell, and to be protected there. I don't want to be protected. I want to be out there in the arena, moving, fighting every day, and being challenged, as you know, I'm encourage my people to be. So it's affect everything that we're doing. The new space that we have, it's an open space that every manager will sit with his people, because I believe that you need to lead by example. And you need to challenge, and you need to be approachable. Not to say that you are approachable, to actually be approachable. I have teams in Japan, I have teams across the state and in Tel Aviv. I'm there all the time. Because if you're not there, you're not there. And it doesn't matter that there is, you know, different technology that enable you to speak. There is something about the inner personality, inner relationship that enable people to ask you the question and to challenge you.
There was a point, this was like 3 or 4 years ago at the World Economic Forum Davos meetings. I bumped into Mark Benioff, the founder of Salesforce.com. And I asked Mark, how do you formulate and find the right questions? And he looked me right in the eye and he said one word: listen. And then he waited to see how I listen. And then, since I was there, we had an amazing 15-minute conversation about what it means to really listen. And that memory got sparked when you said, as you go around as a CEO, I've got to, and your leaders, managers, they got to be approachable. What does that mean?
Approachable, it's mean that if you're using the word approachable, meaning that you failed. Because it's need to be part of the DNA of everything that you are doing, that you don't need to be approachable. You are approachable by nature. And I think that it's a lot of body language about smiling, about people that they will feel, and it's like 70% of the communication between people, it's non-verbal. So it's everything that you are doing, the way you dress, the way you look, the way you approach them, and the way you treat everybody. So once people are feeling that they can approach you, they will approach you. You don't need to be approachable if you are approachable.
Does that way of leading for you give you energy or take it away?
Oh, I like it a lot. To be able to build a group of people that have one mission, that they are working together in order to achieve this mission, this is something that you know, I'm waking up every morning for this. The creativity, the challenge, to do something new, to find the right answer to a solution, or a solution that I'm not sure that exists there, and to create it from scratch. This is something that I like a lot.
Why did you choose cybersecurity? Because there are lots of big issues out there, lots of challenges, lots of things that you could have selected. Why that one?
It's a combination of two things. One is my background. I spent 6 years in the 8-100 unit in the military in Israel. I received the Medal of Honor. I was part of the group that was dealing with cybersecurity over there. After that, I was working for one of the government agencies in Tel Aviv. So I was dealing with cybersecurity all my life.
Did you randomly land in that 8200 unit?
So basically, they are recruiting you.
Okay. So you already had some interest.
So I had a lot of interest, and I can say that I'm an expert in this field.
Okay.
But there is another thing that it's here, because there is many people that came from that unit and the place that I came, and they didn't choose to work or to build company in the cybersecurity arena.
Exactly.
They choose to do something else.
Right.
I believe that people today understand that cybersecurity, it's not about, as I said earlier, IT security anymore.
Right.
The problem has changed. We're dealing with people that try to attack you. So I find it fascinating to create kind of an iron dome for organization to enable them to protect themselves in an arena that it's keep moving and changing. And for me, this is a fascinating problem to solve, and I believe that it's a huge problem to solve, because I don't like to solve small problems. I want to solve big problems. I'm not talking about the day-to-day. I'm talking about kind of the mission of the company.
Earlier you mentioned for the bad guys who are trying to break in and do, and then it's figuring out how do we discover and figure it out. You mentioned this word intent. How do you ascertain or determine someone's intent? That's a tough one.
It's a tough one, and I want to correct something. A lot of people still thinking about cybersecurity as the bad guys wants to come in. The thing is...
What I just said, right?
Yes. The thing is, they're already in. In most of organizations, when we are deploying the system, we can find an adversary active in the environment. It's a fascinating thing to think of, that every big organization that exists out there already have the adversary in. So now the question is, how can I find it and to validate that it's in, and then to start tracking what they are doing. From what they are doing, I can conclude what is their intent. Are they moving low and slow? Are they very aggressive? Is it connected to a specific country out there? Because this is a backtrace that you can do sometimes not. So I think all of this together will give you eventually what they're trying to achieve and the intent.
Wow. It reminds me of Ed Catmull at Pixar.
Yep.
And essentially, he has maybe different words, but the same logic for Pixar, which is the adversary, this thing that shuts down our inquiry and shuts down our candor, is already in and will always be in. And then it's a question of nonstop vigilance about what foothold does it have, and what are we going to do about it. It's a very different way of thinking about it.
That's what I said earlier. It's a very different problem that we're trying to solve. Usually here in the States, you will think about things as black and white. I want to go in, find them, kill them, then I'm safe. That's the way that we are trained to think.
Think of our political discourse. I get it. Yep.
This is the way that, in Tel Aviv and in Boston, that's the way that you are thinking. The thing is that the problem is not that type of the problem. It's like you cannot just go in, eliminate it, and that's it. You can do it once, but after 3 days, they will be in again. And you try to build a very, very high wall. But this only works in the movies. It's not working anymore.
It causes me to wonder, even here at MIT, where arguably some of the world's brightest people are we really preparing them to behave and approach the world the way you're describing?
I believe that it's not the black and white approach anymore. It's the shade of, I wanted to say the shade of gray, but I'm not sure that I want to say it. The shade of gray, of black, of white, to understand that there is a complex environment that we're living in, and we need to navigate ourselves inside this environment. Once we understand this, and we understand that this is the type of challenge and problem that we need to solve every day, then we can win.
If you had the chance to gift to your not only children but grandchildren and perhaps great-grandchildren one or two leadership skills or attributes or competencies, I don't know what the word is, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
One or two that, if that's what you could gift to them, this is what it would be. What would those one or two things
I think it's a combination of two.
Okay.
One, maybe it will be kind of obvious, is to be courage, not to fear, to move forward. This is kind of the dare. The other side is to put a question mark on almost everything that you're doing. Because the one that just moving without looking, they're gonna fail and they're not gonna know that they fail, and that will be the end of their leadership. The one that are moving very strongly, very aggressively, and leading with a lot of charisma on one hand, but putting a question mark every day to validate if the thing that they're doing is the right thing, if they ask the right question, if they're doing the right thing, then those two basically balanced the conversation and balance the way that you are thinking every day and enable you to really move forward endlessly.
What has been one, maybe two moments in your life that have demanded the most courage?
So, as somebody that have been in the military, I have multiple of them.
Yeah.
Multiple of them that I cannot share a lot.
I got it.
But I think that, but let's talk about it in a different point of view. It's
Okay.
when you are part of the military and you are facing a life of that situation, I think that gives you a different perspective in the business world.
Yeah.
It's really give you the ability to understand that there is bigger problems. And sometimes you need to decide in a split of a second a decision that will result a life of death or that situation.
Yeah.
Then it's like sharpen your instincts that enables you to understand that a little bit of perspective about everything that we're doing on a day-to-day.
I can see that. It's that last year I had the chance with David Brashears, a mountaineer, and I'm not a mountaineer, but I trekked to Everest Base Camp and into the ice fall just before the avalanche and earthquake happened. And that experience, even as a complete novice in that space, it had that sharpening effect.
Yep.
It like clarifies, because for a variety of reasons I felt like I was in a life and death situation, and it has that clarifying quality.
Yep.
You're right. And then to this day I can still put on the boots in that space, literally put those boots on in that space, and remember that kind of clarity.
Yep. I believe that, after 6 years military, another 7 years government, after you've been in those situations and your body used to do this and to focus, then you know how to apply it when there is not a life and death situation.
That's right.
Then you know that, okay, I understand the situation. Now it's the time to be super focused, decide very fast, not asking questions, on the contrary of what I said. Execute, do it, and then, validate and debrief.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an instinct that I think that I apply in the business arena every day without kind of even thinking about it.
Wow. Well, this has been a gift for me. Truly, it's been a gift of a conversation. I'm going to walk away with some grand insights. I have already. So thank you very much.
Thank you.